Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us and joining the webinar, Business Strategies for Utility Apps That Actually Work. So due to rising trend and popularity of utility applications, the new ones are released every day. And once you start developing an application, you need to weigh your options and think over this scalable business model. And that is why we're organizing the webinar, where our two panelists join us from Listonic. Kamil from Listonic, thank you very much for joining us, and Vera from Gismart.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Yeah, they actually have extensive experience in utility apps. Kamil is a co-founder of Listonic and has been there from the beginning, and Vera is a product manager, director of product of Gismart. So both of them have extensive knowledge and extensive experience in utility apps, and I'm sure they will be more than happy to share the experience. So before we begin and dive into the webinar, I'd like to make a few announcements. First, this webinar will include polling. So throughout the webinar, I will turn on the polls that will pop up on your screen, on the attendee screen, and the attendees will be able to answer. So it will be multiple choice polls, and just feel free to answer. All of these answers are anonymous, and they are only there for us to understand our audience, our audience, and how can we actually make our webinars better in the future. Also, because of the format of the webinar, we can't really see the attendees. We can't interact with attendees. So I am going to try to make a little bit different this time. We will have a Q&A session, question and answer session at the end. So we'll begin about, 20 minutes, 15 minutes to the end, before the end. And we will answer the questions that we have in our Q&A session. So if you see the Q&A box, please type a question and we will get to it at the end of the webinar. However, if you would like to ask a question by voice, and your microphone actually works, please raise your hand and I will unmute you and you will be able to interact with our panelists by voice. Hopefully that sounds good. Maybe some of our attendees also have extensive experience in utility apps and would like to share their experience, so that is also a possibility. That will be kept towards the end of the webinar. So now we can begin, and I'm going to share the screen here. So we all can see what actually we are going to talk about. Let me minimize the window here so it doesn't bother me. Okay, so this is just a welcome, obviously, slide. For agenda today, we'll include several questions, such as you see on the screen. So let's start with, let's cover what is the difference between utility apps and other types of apps. Have our panelists actually had experience with other types of apps? Vera or Kamil, please welcome. Actually, you know what? I never actually let you introduce yourself, so why don't you do that before we dive in? My bad. Sorry about that. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Vera from Gismart, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Vera. I'm working as product manager and I have large experience in developing mobile apps, both mobile apps and web apps. Gismart is focusing on music mobile apps. We have a wide range of apps, including utility apps and music gaming apps. And now we are widely, growing, and we're working not only as a mobile developer, but also as a publisher, right? And as far as my experience with utility apps, we have a few utility apps in our brand, which is the Metronome app, GuitarTune app, and I have previous experience with some specific niche utility apps.
Thank you, Vera. And Kamil, why don't you take a few words, just introduce yourself and go over Listonic just a little bit, just to give our attendees the idea.
Sure. Hi, everyone. At Listonic, we have one application, just one, which is a shopping list. So very much an utility app, and we take care for monetization of two other apps, which are a little bit utility, a little bit content apps. They are weekly circular apps. So it's still not a game, still close to utilities.
Yeah, well, good thing that the topic of the webinar is actually utility apps. So it's a good thing that you don't have a game. I would not go well probably with the webinar. Anyway, so let's cover actually the difference, since you mentioned the games. Let's cover the difference between the utility apps and other apps. Have you guys worked in other apps before? And what are the pros and cons of the utility apps? Vera, take it away.
Yeah, I think I think the main difference between utility apps and other apps is how, simple a proper utility app should be and how focused on solving a specific problem it is. Because if we're talking about productivity apps, or I don't even start talking about, gaming, entertainment apps, which are a totally different world. Utility app is really, really focused on solving a specific issue, kind of giving you this very specific and minimalistic service. And I think in this notion lies both pros and cons of this industry, because on the one hand, it usually takes less time to develop than, like a large game or something, right? So it's just more minimal, so it can launch quicker. But on the other hand, since it's a smaller type of app, the competition is higher since many more companies can do that. So you really need to think how to add something new and how to add additional value to your specific utility app and stand out from other apps. So I think this is like really challenging part and really interesting part about utility apps is that you're doing something simple, but still you kind of trying to find the gap and trying to find something you can add as additional value to win the competition.
Thank you so much. Kamil or Vera, have you had, before you started your journey with the utility apps, have you had experience with working with other type of apps? And if so, for how long and what were they and how more challenging it was? Maybe Kamil, maybe you can start.
Sure, yeah. So I don't have hands-on experience with games or other types of apps. But I have lots of friends from other companies, and I know it's not hands-on, but I know what are the difficulties there, and I know the differences. So for me, the biggest difference between utility apps and games is that utilities are usually not for so many people as games are, and you have to fight for this user very, very much. But when you have this user, then he stays with you for a long time. And with games, usually the lifetime is not that long. You have this user each day, couple of times each day, but you don't have to care for him or her that much. Like for us, our user is like it's everything we have. So like interstitial ads are generally in every game. And in utilities, interstitials are not that popular. And for us, like we watch every ad that we add, every placement, and we see what's the impact on retention, and we know what we can do and what we can't do, and we are very limited with these placements and types of ads. In games, you basically can monetize a little bit more aggressive.
Of course. Yeah, when we are working with any kind of business, of course, we want to retain our customer, since this is the main thing that actually drives the revenue and makes the food on the table, right? So, of course, this is what we care about. But before we dive into that, my computer froze. Let's go over user acquisition. How exactly do we get these users? So when you guys started, from my understanding, nobody knew about Gismart. Nobody knew about Listonic at the beginning. How did you begin your journey into introducing your app to the world? And did you have a lot of money to spend into paid user acquisition, or were you able to figure out a smart way to gain and retain organic growth?
I can start if you want. Basically, at Gismart, we have a number. So there are many games. There are a few utility apps, and for a matter of example, I'll be using one of those, which is Metronome, which has a kind of interesting history. So the app was developed in 2012 and was pretty successful and had its own way. And at some point, it was such a nice niche. It took that really good, and we didn't really use user acquisition. Just people were like sharing it, and retention was nice. So it occupied high position in stores, and it lived without acquisition for a few years. And after that, we decided, well, we want to get more. So we only just after the few years. And first few years just lived organically. And it was such an, I think, demand for this type of app because, when we talk about utility apps, we usually don't think about music utility apps. So, and this was the industry which, the demand was high. So I think we were kind of first on the market, which allowed us to occupy really high positions. And we're still, so right now, like, for example, if you take iOS App Store, so it's like top 30 apps in music category in China and top 50 in the United States, which is a really nice position, especially for such a small app like a Metronome, right? So, and then after that, when we wanted just to introduce the app to a larger audience, we introduced user acquisition. And it also worked really well for us, and we were surprised how this type of apps can also be popular and compete with, gaming and all those shiny, bright stuff.
Thank you so much. Kamil, what about you? What about your user acquisition? So before we started the webinar, we actually did a small call, and I learned a little bit about Listonic and your journey. And I think that your story actually is fascinating about how you started in Poland and grew in the world, and how were you able to gain and retain the users. Would you mind please sharing a few insights?
Yeah, no problem. It will take 3 minutes or 5 because it's long. So we started in 2009. We started with Java phones. It was a time when iPhone was starting. Then they introduced installed apps to iPhone. But before I touched the first iPhone in my life, we developed apps for non-color Java phones, which is basically like a shopping list on an old Nokia phone is only for geeks. You really have to want it much.
Want it to work.
To install it. Yeah. So we were a little bit stupid to start it in 2009, but we did it. And at first, we were popular among tech geeks in only one country, in Poland. We had a very good press. We had word of mouth. It just spread it. Like the user base was good, but it was only geeks. Right now, we have moms and young families with children, because that's the audience that needs a shopping list. But at first it was only geeks. So we started with Java phones, then we had Blackberries. Before Windows Phone, there was something like Windows Mobile. We were really big on this platform, but there's no Windows Phone and no Windows Mobile now. So it doesn't count from 2018, but we were there. Then we had Android and iOS, and it's really good right now. But yeah, it was hard at first, and our monetization strategy was that we had our own sales force. because we were only in one country, and there were and we had like, let's say 50,000 users monthly, so it wasn't huge. We had to monetize it really, really well. So the only way to go was to have our own sales force and very high CPMs. Mm-hmm. And we had it like that. Like today, until today, we in Poland, it's just one country, we have our own sales force, and when we sell our ads, we sell it like 20, 30, 50 times, the CPM is 50 times higher than what the market pays.
And that is because we have able to have direct deals. Sorry.
Yeah, because in like Listonic is probably a good example of the shopping lists are a good example of utility apps, because our user shopper uses the shopping list only a couple of times, actually around 15 times a month, when he or she is planning to go to shop, or he or she is in the shop shopping. So that's 15 times. Every time, not more, like average time in app is just 1 minute. Mm-hmm. So it's like a hammer. It's a tool. It's a utility. You think that you don't have pasta at your home. You open Listonic, you type it in, and that's it. And that's just a couple of seconds or a minute that you have this user. And for ads that are served from AdMob, from other networks, that's not worth a lot, because from AdMob we will have generic ads that usually like the advertiser wants the user to click on the ad and do some conversion. But people, when they use the application just to type in that they want to buy pasta, they are not willing to do anything else. It's very hard to convert somebody to at this moment, to convert him to install some other application or to buy something in e-commerce shop. But that's the moment when CPG producer of the pasta manufacturer can say something about their pasta, and that's this 15 times a month.
Right,
these are the best moments.
Sorry to interrupt, but that is more towards monetization. But what about the user acquisition? How did you acquire all of these users specifically to Poland?
Okay.
Are you going door to door selling it, or?
So we were in Poland. We just had good PR, good word of mouth, and we tried some paid ads, but and it did some installs, lots of installs, but they were not. These users were not so good as these organic ones, and we sticked with organic growth. Maybe these users were not that good, but to be true, we didn't have that much money. And then we translated Listonic to other languages. We did very the job there at the translation and to match the cultures of each country. It was done quite good, and we do a lot of ASO, App Store optimization, and we grow organically in 40 countries right now.
If you don't mind me asking, can you share the number of the users that you've had in your first year? Do you even remember? Like how many users was this organic, very small growth was able to?
I would be embarrassed. It would be around 10,000 using Java phones, using the old Nokias, and 10,000.
Well, I think that's encouraging, because like in the first year you had 10,000, and right now I don't even know how many you have. Can you share that number?
700,000, 800,000, something like that.
So it's a quite a big increase, 70 times increase in 9 years, and I think that's an amazing result that you're showing here. So hopefully that all people that are trying to grow their utility apps will experience similar growth. How exactly were you able to optimize your App Store optimization with the keywords so much that it brought you all of the organic growth that bumped you up to 700,000 users?
How we do the App Store optimization?
Yeah. So how do you optimize it, and how do you maybe test it out? And do you do any kind of research and testing in different App Store optimization techniques?
We have a team that does A/B tests per each market. Every 2 weeks we have. It's not my team, but as far as I remember, they are testing it every two weeks with new versions of the presentation of the application in the App Store, in the Google Play mainly. We test descriptions, titles, screens, keywords, everything that we can.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and does it fluctuate from small organic growth to large when you change certain keywords or any other techniques, or does it just normally stay?
At first, like the first half a year, we had huge increases, but right now we have maxed it out, and the increases are little, but they are there, so it's worth working on it.
Okay. That's I think that's a very interesting insight, but let's move on and talk about other questions. So user retention. Once you gained users, that's great. That's a good thing to have. You have users. How do you make sure that actually they keep using your app? So the trick with the utility apps, and the attendees may not know it, is that user retention is not as high in utility apps as in other types of ads, such as social networks or gaming and so on. So what is the trick here to retain the users?
So I think I'll start. I think basically the trick is, and if you want to be ahead of the game, so it's to use similar techniques, gaming industry uses, but trying to adapt it to the utility type of app. It's like a general idea. Is getting down to what helps. So I think that one thing that works really well is push strategy. So push notification, in-app messages, etc. So even though you have utility type of app that's not gaming, you can still send your users a reminder that you might want to use. For example, since we focus on the music industry, like metronome apps and tuner apps, people use for hobbies. So we especially send a lot of push notifications on weekends, in the evening, when we think people might want to do some music practice. And this works really well for us. So think about the pattern when the user might want to use your app. And besides going together with a push strategy, so there is a rising trend of push notifications, which might work for, like weather apps or maybe some simple travel apps as well. So if you send a weather app, think about maybe you can send something to people in the morning. If it's an alarm clock, maybe you can trace the pattern. So I think that the best thing about the push strategy works even better for utility apps than for gaming apps if you think right about it and think about the proper scenarios and proper stimulus to work with your app. Another thing is, I think you should really work well on your onboarding flow, because of all days of retention, you really want to fight for the first day of users coming back. And after that, it's more of quality of product, but you really want at least 20-25% of users to come on the first day. So I'd work hard and focus on optimizing the first session of the users, on making a proper onboarding flow, so making sure that users you acquire organically or via acquisition, they understood the essence of your app, how it works, it's convenient to use, and their first session is good. And I think this is especially important exactly for utility type of apps, because the competition is high, and usually people are downloading a few, if it's not a unique proposition. For example, you have an alarm clock. People tend to download a few alarm clocks, so you'll be like competing right away. So if they understand how to use it quickly in the first session, they probably will come back. If they don't, they wouldn't even spend the effort to coming back and maybe figuring it out, which is not the case with the gaming. So they might come back. Great. And I think like gaming tricks, so you try to think about the ways to make it more entertaining and engaging, because the reason why game retention is so high is because people just enjoying it and relaxing, and you can always find time, to have fun. You also want to have fun, and maybe you not always want to, check the weather. So I think a nice way, specifically our product took, is that we're trying to incorporate some minor gaming within the app, so that the user not only use the specific utility app, but also, have some fun around.
Right. Thank you, Vera. So the difference between Vera's Gismart apps and Listonic app is that Gismart apps actually are more entertainment oriented, and the use of that is very different than a utility app that actually is day-to-day uses as a grocery shop, the smart grocery list. So Kamil, what about you? How do you retain the users? How do you make sure they come back and they just make notes on their notepads after a while?
Yeah, so I like to think when I'm talking with someone about user retention, I usually use a metaphor of a hammer, because when a hammer would send you a push message, come on, let's hit some nails, it won't work. You have to want, at first, you have to have a need to hit some nails to build something with this hammer. And that's exactly the point with a shopping list. You need to want to write something down that you want to buy. You have to feel the need to buy pasta or tomatoes or potatoes, and you need to feel the pain of forgetting about it. So we just have to be a very good tool for our users. When we have a flawless tool, they will remember about us, and they will know that when they write something down in Listonic, it will be shared with, like I share with my wife, the list, and she has to have them. She has to trust their Listonic that whatever she types in, then that they will be synchronized to my phone, and that I will buy it when I will be coming home, and that's it. Like she has to know how to use it. She has to know what Listonic can do for her, and the tool has to be flawless. Like we really fight with every error that we see when we see it, and it's just a shopping list. There's no magic there, but the quality of the application has to be top, absolutely top, and then we see retention.
Yeah.
And that's the quality is the most important factor for retention in tools.
Right. So the top tricks are the high quality app and push notification and user engagement. But what about monetization? Does that affect your retention in any way, the user retention? Have you experienced different maybe advertisement that you use that maybe didn't do so well with the retention and users got annoyed and left? Have you experienced anything like that?
Yes. When we get users that are not ready for the shopping list, they just won't use it, and we won't earn money, and that's it. So when we push users, when we buy ads for everyone to just come and install our Listonic, the quality of the user won't be good.
Right.
And they will just leave us.
Yeah.
The organic ones are far better.
Yeah. I would assume so as well. Normally, organic users actually retain a lot better, monetize a lot better than paid one, which is irony of the user acquisition. Okay.
I mean, okay. No. I was just saying that, of course, like organic users are at random, but I think the beauty of user acquisition is not just use retention as, the holy cow. You just kind of try to introduce the product to a larger audience and just don't expect too much from that. And I think it's just importance of user acquisition, and this important thing to understand that it's better not to get large amount of audience, but a higher quality of audience. So when you're tailoring your, ads and, videos, try to kind of give the essence. So it's just better to get a better type of audience and to deliver the message.
Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you for the insight. Before we dive deeper into monetization, I just want to take a second and say that we released first poll and we already see the results. So thank you for answering those, and we will be pushing more polls. So please take just a few seconds and answer it, and that will provide us a big insight and help into organizing future webinars. Thank you very much. Okay, back to the webinar. I forgot what I'm here for. Monetization. So let's talk more about monetization. I would like really to start with Kamil and see, you kind of mentioned that in the beginning about monetizing your Polish users and having the direct deals coming from grocery stores and brands, and providing a really high eCPM. Were you successful doing the same strategy worldwide, or if not, what other strategies that you practice?
Could you repeat, please, because it's breaking a little bit for me.
Sure. I'm trying to dive into monetization right now, and I found it really interesting that you were able to receive direct offers on your Polish users and get a really high eCPM and monetize them really well. So Polish users, were you able to do the same monetization technique worldwide, or did you have to switch to a different technique, and if so, which one?
Okay, it's hard to monetize. It's hard for us to monetize Listonic in the same way as we did in Poland in other countries, because we cannot, at the moment, we cannot afford our own to build a sales force in States, in France, in Germany, in UK, in every country that we are there. And without sales force, we cannot present our offer in a good way to our customers, to our clients. And without it, it's just not possible. So unless we have 1 million users or 500,000 users in States or in other countries, we just won't be able to sell it in the same way. It's not feasible. But we work with some partners, especially in States, that specialize in ads that are very similar to our ads in Poland, and we just partner with them, and they sell a little portion of our inventory in States for much higher eCPMs than the network prices.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Vera, what about you? Are you able to get some sort of direct deals, just like Listonic does? Maybe from, I don't know, musical brands, musical instrument brands, or something like that, or bands that are about to air in your area.
I mean, we used to have this kind of cooperations, but more for gaming apps, because people more focused on, because music is all about entertainment. It's more about the game, and like a Gismart, we have a large amount of, applications. So it's more typical of, entertaining apps, and not apps for professional. Like we have an app, for example, Beatmaker Go, which allows you to create, track electronic music. So it's more this type of native apps cooperation. But I also wanted to add a little bit about, the different types of models Talking about our experience, I mean, previously, since majority of part of our apps, first of a bunch of our apps, was started like 2012 or something. So we started from freemium and premium models, and it worked really well for us. And at some point, like a couple of years ago, we found that, well, we might want to switch to freemium, and I think freemium is the best way for utility apps to gain the audience and get the money from the audience, because the competition is hard. There are many products at the same time, so I wouldn't go for premium, I'd say, unless you have very unique proposition on the market, because otherwise people looking for the app, they will go for free ones first, right? And I think freemium is a really nice way, and it goes hand in hand with subscription model, right? Which is a great rise, I guess, now a big trend last half a year, maybe year, especially for iOS. And this also works really well for us, but it's also really tricky with utility apps, because you need to think really well what you can offer. And this again getting us to the question and to the position when you need to think what you're offering within your really minimalistic utility app, and whether you can deliver something new to push it and to be relevant.
Right.
So,
Vera, can you tell us if you tried different monetization techniques such as premium and subscription model on the same app? So just released a different version of the same app with different monetization methods, or was it tried on completely different apps?
So I mean, getting back, for example, to Metronome, but it's pretty the same story for all the utility apps we have. So we had a premium version and premium version simultaneously. And premium version had some additional features, but I can't say that it was like the best choice. It was just for the best, really people who need professional type of metronome. And at some point we decided, well, we might not really want to separate it, because people who get freemium might also want, develop their skills, and at some point they might need some of those features, and it's hard to tell which feature should go in premium, which feature should go in premium. So then at some point we had just freemium, and then when subscription models were introduced by App Store, by Apple, we switched to subscription model, and then it was a big challenge for us, because Metronome is a really, really simple type of, app, right? So what we did is, well, we thought I think the right thing is to think about your audience. So what we did, we thought, okay, so for our audience, and we already had like 500,000 monthly active users. And we figured out that through a number of ways, that it's usually either professional musicians or people who go to musical school or just play music as a hobby. They're learning just to play some instruments. So we thought, well, maybe we can offer them some additional funny, entertaining way, since we're good at, doing music apps, just to relax while they're using that metronome. Or maybe they're using metronome in the evening at home, and while they're, in the subway or just having a break. So what we did is we designed a few rhythm games, and which helped people to improve their rhythm skills. And it worked really well for us. We introduced subscription model for those games and just a few other features of the app. And it worked really well for us, because on the one hand, some people like subscription model better because they feel like, well, I want it now, I might not want it later. And
right.
This is why some people don't really want to go to premium, because they feel like this is a more harder commitment. And especially when you have a free trial there, so you can kind of show all beauty of your apps, and then they make a decision whether they buy it or not. So this works really well for us. So talking about the monetization model, I think the best approach is to think a bit wider than a simple utility app. That it's important to keep it minimal. So don't try to invent a huge, so something small, but this kind of gives you a different approach. And I think you should ask yourself, what else might your user want, and what your actual audience is. I think that understanding of the audience is the key to success here.
Yeah, thank you, Vera. So what about I wanted to ask you, since you have so many apps, have you tried like a bundles? Have you tried bundles and sell them, 5 apps for the price of 2 or something like that? Or any kind of
I mean, we had this type of experience, but I cannot say that it was really successful. We kind of, from this type of approach, we decided to shift to cross promotion. And this works really well for us because the company is really have many apps coming up. So cross promotions, if you have a few apps, I think this is something you definitely should consider, because usually if you have a really good app, and we know that utility app has to be really good to win the market, so people trust you better and you can offer them more. So this way you kind of have another channel, acquisition channel, and people come from your apps. Usually they're more, they like you better because they probably like the way you style, the design, the way you do things. So what about among bundles, cross promotion, special deals? I think cross promotion works really well for us and works really well for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. Kamil, coming back to you. What about you? Have you played around with different types of monetization, like premium or subscription models? And did you like it?
Yeah, we have premium, we have subscriptions, but it's not a huge part of our business. We have it. Some users pay, but most of them don't. And we are good at monetization, and we like ads. Like we had to set up the prices for premium and subscriptions so very high because we are able to monetize these users kind of high. So they have to pay a lot for us to just make sense for them to allow to turn off the ads.
Right. So it makes more sense for you to actually monetize with advertisement rather than with real money.
We are happy with ads.
Very interesting. What is the percentage, if that's something that you know or able to share, what is the percentage of the revenue that you are able to generate from ads versus premium? If you're able to share it.
Oh, it will be like below 5%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Premiums and subscriptions total make below 5%.
Okay. Yeah. Looks like ads, it's the only way to go for you. Vera, what about you guys? Any percentage numbers that you can share?
Unfortunately, I cannot tell you the numbers, but say that I think it really depends on your strategy, and those strategies work. Whether you rely on subscriptions or whether you rely on monetization and ads, it really depends on the strategy. But yeah, unfortunately, I cannot share the numbers.
Okay, so you're not able to share any numbers. That's fine. Move on. Let's moving on. So we are now can talk. If I'm able to switch the slide. Yeah, my keynote is acting up for some reason. So we are now going to be talking about international expansion. I find it fascinating that sometimes apps work really well in one area and don't work. Same app doesn't work in different area, even though you translate it, you adapt it to culture, to the culture as much as possible. But sometimes it still is not as popular. So let's dig into international expansion, and what have you guys experienced when you went from Poland to other countries? Or from my understanding, actually Gismart has always been international, so you didn't have as much probably experience in this area, but maybe there actually were new areas, geographical regions where you were able to encounter some challenges. So Kamil, can you share a little bit of your experience in that area?
Yeah, so Shopping List is a basic app, but still the localization is not easy because just the translation doesn't do the work. If you do translation, it's like 10% of what you should do, maybe less. Because after translating the application, you have to dig deep into the culture of each country to know how shoppers in this country shop, what they buy, what's important for them, Yeah, and that's it in terms of culture and how they name all the things that they are buying. And it's not easy because when you just ask some translator to translate something into Turkish, for example, he or she will do it, and you will have it, and it won't do the work. And that's just the start. Then you have to think about the culture. After you have the culture, you have to think about the promotion. So translating all the marketing materials that you have, how the application presents itself in the Google Play or App Store, that's the start. Because when you do App Store optimization, then you have to do A/B tests, and we do it every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks you have to have nice new screens with Turkish translations and Turkish culture, and you have to have maybe new name, maybe new description with Turkish translation, and with 40 or 50 translations each 2 weeks. So it is a lot of work.
Yeah. I imagine it's a lot of work. What about monetization in these different regions? What kind of challenges did you encounter?
So in Poland we have our own sales force, and we sell very little to ad networks. In States we have a little waterfall. At the top there are partners that sell directly, and they are very focused on selling only to CPGs and retail partners, like we do in Poland. And they pay 10 or 20 times as CPMs that we can get on the market. Then we use Apple. So we sell maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe just from time to time 15% of our inventory to premium publishers, and then we go to Apple Deal and each ad network that we use there.
Yeah, that is the monetization method that you use other than in Poland, right?
Yeah. So in Poland we have direct sales. In States we have kind of direct sales, but it's not done by us. It's done by specific partners and ad networks through Apple Deal. And in every other country we have Apple Deal. Okay.
Not trying to make an accent on Apple Deal or anything like that, but what is the breakdown between the direct deals from Poland that you're getting, and talking about the revenue number or percentage from the direct deals from Poland that you get, or advertisement, just a generic advertisement in the rest of the world? Is there a big difference? Is the main revenue stream still the direct deals, or no?
We are half and half. We do half the revenue from direct deals in Poland and the other half from the rest of the world.
Okay, very nice. And how many users do you have in Poland versus the rest of the world, in percentage-wise?
In Poland we have 200,000, and in the other countries we have 500, 600,000.
Okay. Yeah, direct deals obviously like is a lot better. So let's all get direct deals if we are able to. Vera, are you able to add anything on the international expansion?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Right. So talking about localization, I would like to agree with Kamil that doing the translation is just really minimal amount of job. And I would even say if you have a new app launched and you want to publish it internationally, you might know and be really limited for resources. You might want to think better beforehand about the interface to be unified, more than you want to really spend a lot of time on localization. And you can add localization a little bit better because a little bit later, because it was surprising to me that, well, it's not the deal breaker. So the thing is that, especially with the apps which are really simple, kind of intuitive, it's more important to create a proper interface which is good user experience, to create really good user experience, than to have everything translated. And just a little bit after that, you can add translation. So it's not like a must-have from the, like soft launch for a soft launch phase, right? And I'd say that maybe, as a company which focuses on music apps, we've always been so lucky with this international expansion because, like music is a global language and it's more unified. So we're less to translate and more kind of, this is like rhythm is thing people understand everywhere, and music is a thing people understand everywhere. So you don't really have to translate that much. And what's interesting for us that now it's not more about the app itself. It really matters how you focus on app store optimization and the way you design store screens. So you might want to be, for example, if you're building Asian, so you might want to do a little bit different color scheme, or especially what we do in our company is that we, for example, if there is Chinese New Year, we would celebrate Chinese New Year, update the store screens, maybe offer some special deals. So we use that general approach. We use premium model everywhere and subscription model everywhere. So we don't do separate for premium and premium, depending on the country. What we do is that we track special holidays, national holidays, like again Chinese New Year, maybe Diwali, or maybe some American holidays separately, and we offer users from that region some special offers, so just maybe celebrate them with them, send them special push notifications, etc. And this is maybe, I think, the biggest way that we will vary our approach towards different countries. And as well, you might want to conduct a few A/B tests regarding pricing. So you might want to set the price a bit different in different countries.
Thank you. And a question for both of the panelists. Is there a certain region or country where you were not able to penetrate no matter how hard you tried? And have you figured out the reason why, to your best knowledge? Vera?
Well, I think if you try hard enough, you will be able to penetrate, but there's another thing is that maybe if it's so hard, you might not really need that. So it might be just better to focus on the regions you're successful at. And this is what I suggest. Like if for some reason you want this country and they don't really want you, you might focus on somebody else and just move on. So I cannot say there was a specific country we struggled with, but we definitely really, so we have like a huge popularity in Asian region. So we, for example, when we do translations or issue some new, screens, apps, whatever, we pay special attention to the way they are translated, etc. So we just kind of take care, we trace the audience and take care about the countries where have larger audience, a little bit better, double check everything rather than other countries. And I think that's the biggest difference to have.
Yeah. What about you, Kamil? Have you had any challenges penetrating any other region in the world that you tried?
My opinion is the same. Like there's no country that you cannot conquer, but it's sometimes very costly. Like for us, German-speaking markets are tough because we have very good competitor there. They are strong in German-speaking markets. We are strong in English-speaking markets, Spanish, French, and other.
Okay.
And it's just very, very hard there for us.
Very good insight. Thank you. The reason I'm asking these questions because it's very interesting how games, for example, have to be either completely changed when they go to different regions, or just the same game just cannot go to two different markets. For example, Chinese and American. They just are not accepted because they're culturally not sustainable. So yeah, that was interesting that experience with utility apps is actually a lot different, since probably everyone likes music throughout the world and everyone needs to go shopping throughout the world. So that's a good insight. Thanks, guys. We have received a few questions over the chat, but at this point, I would like to ask the attendees if they have actually. Hold on, let me go here. If they actually have questions that they would like to ask panelists or myself by voice. So if you do, please go ahead and raise your hand. You can see a little button next to your name as a raise hand. And if you do that, I will be able to unmute you and you will be able to ask a question by voice. So for now, all of the hands are lowered and we are going to read some messages. So we have a question to Kamil. What is your average daily active user on Listonic? That is, I just want to say that question came from Eyal Elarar, if I'm pronouncing it right. If I'm not, I'm sorry. And this may be classified. So if it is, Kamil, feel free to say so. But if it is,
it's around 90,000 users.
90,000 daily active users on Listonic.
Yeah.
Okay. Very, very, very cool. Thank you so much. Next question. Do any developers here have a vast, where did the question go? Have a vast user in Vietnam? Well, do you guys monetize in Vietnam well, or do you have any users in Vietnam, or you don't have any information on that? Vera?
I mean, we do have some users in Vietnam, but I cannot say that this is comparing, for example, to China, so it's like a smaller market. But I mean, you cannot compare. I think like in the Asian region, China is like the biggest market to focus on. And I mean, yeah, but I think we're localized in Vietnam as well.
Okay. Kamil?
Yeah, we have some users in Vietnam, but Vietnam is not in top 25. So yeah, I cannot say more. Just we don't have that much users.
Yeah, that's a very specific question, Eyal. It's a very cool question, but if you were able to provide more information why you ask it, we probably would be able to provide you more answer and more insightful information that you would be satisfied with. So, well, the answer is provided. Let's mark it as answered. Okay, let's see further. Oh yeah, so there is another question to Listonic. Is all your business run around the app that you develop in your house, or do you use outsource?
Not all of our business runs around one application, but we are responsible for monetizing a couple of more apps which are not ours. But they are not, as far as I know, they are not popular outside of Poland.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was the rest of the questions. I don't see any more questions. So if we are done and there are no panelists that actually are raising their hands, so my experiment was not successful. I am very sorry to admit that. Okay. Oh, there is a new question. Pavel Kata is asking to Kamil, how do you feel about your competition? Is it different in the world than in your local country? That's an interesting question.
Is it different? The competition, is it different? It is, because in Poland, I would say that, Pavel, you can be from Poland. Your name sounds Polish, but so Listonic is here since 2009, and from time to time we do some research and we are trying to check how many users in Poland use our competition, and basically Poland is 85% Listonic. So when somebody uses a shopping list on their phone, and it is a dedicated app, it's probably Listonic. So it's kind of easy, because when you're on a party and people are talking and somebody will ask what shopping list you do use on your phone, and then somebody would probably tell that Listonic is kind of good. And outside of Poland, it doesn't work like that. We have to fight more. we have strong competition from two companies. I won't mention which ones.
Thank you, Kamil. And actually, Pavel said that yes, he is Polish in chat. So, and yeah, it does sound Pavel with the W. It does sound very Polish. Okay, last question from Eyal LRR. The question. Okay, the Pavel is also thanking you for the response. Last question. Did you develop to iOS and Android in parallel, or did you start on one platform and then moved on to the second one?
Like at Gismart, we usually tend to develop in parallel just because we have capacity to do that. But as well, I think if you're limited to your resources, I'd suggest to focus on one platform, and once you're happy with the way it works, with the way people interact with it, to move to another, because it saves you some time and kind of gives you some shortcuts in the changes you made just to make the experience better.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Kamil? Have you started on iOS or Android first and then moved on to the different platform? Maybe Amazon.
No. Yeah, we started on Nokia's. Yeah, so
when did you?
I won't tell it.
When did you go into
from Nokia's? At first we had iOS, then we had Android. But that's just because iOS was the first one. So if it was Android, then we will go for Android probably. But now we are developing both apps in parallel. With new apps that we are developing, we start with Android, we test our assumptions, and if it's working, then we do iOS too.
Okay, very nice. I don't have any more open questions, and we did have several polls that all our attendees were kindly answering. Thank you so much for doing that, and I would like to thank also Valerie, who is right here, who was helping me. Who was helping me in the backseat by marking question as answered and also asking the polls. So yay, yay for the good team. Thank you, Vera. Thank you, Kamil. Thank you for your time. And thanks so much to attendees for listening. This, again, was recorded, and this will be sent to you as a follow-up. If you were registered, obviously you were, if you're attendee, to your email address that you provided with you while you were registering. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now. And I hope that you enjoyed the webinar. So thanks, Kamil.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Vera. Thanks, Valerie. Bye, everyone.